Hundreds of people across Britain perform extraordinary things, often quietly and unnoticed. But for one man, the spotlight that once defined his existence became the source of his deepest suffering. At his peak, Cliff Richard was one of the biggest stars Britain had ever seen. A voice of joy, a symbol of decency, and a man who seemed incapable of falling. Yet in a matter of hours, everything came crashing down. What followed was a devastating period that nearly broke him entirely. Now at 85, unmarried, childless, and facing profound health challenges, Cliff Richard stands as a complex figure, a legend whose greatest achievements could not shield him from his most painful trials. Most people describe Cliff Richard as Britain's polite answer to Elvis Presley. The statistics alone tell a remarkable story. He has sold more than 250 million records, placed 68 singles in the British top 10, and received a knighthood from the Queen. For 6 decades, his voice has been one of the most familiar sounds in popular music. Yet, the man who sang about joy and celebration has lived a life marked by loneliness that most people would never imagine. Cliff Richard was born on October 14, 1940 in northern British India as Harry Webb. His father, Roger Oscar Webb, managed a catering contractor that serviced the Indian Railways, while his mother, Dorothy Marie Dazzley, raised Cliff alongside his 3 sisters. The family lived comfortably by the standards of the time, but that security rested on a government structure already beginning to crumble. When Indian independence came in 1947, thousands of British families faced an impossible choice: stay in a country that no longer wanted them or return to a homeland most had never truly known. The Webb family chose to leave. They sold their belongings, packed what remained, and boarded a ship called the SS Ranchi for a 3-week voyage to Tilbury, Essex. But the England they found was not the England they had imagined from postcards. There was no warm welcome waiting at the docks, only a semi-detached house in Chislehurst, Surrey, where Cliff's maternal grandmother took them in temporarily. From relative wealth in India, they had descended into something closer to survival in post-war Britain. Eventually, the family moved to a 3-bedroom council house in Chant, Hertfordshire, where true hardship began. Cliff shared a bedroom with 2 of his sisters, and money was so tight that the family developed a specific strategy to stretch it. 3 times a week, dinner consisted of nothing but hot tea and toast sprinkled with sugar. That meal was not a treat or a nostalgic memory. It was the only thing they could afford. Despite these circumstances, Cliff excelled at school, placing in the top stream at Cheshunt Secondary Modern School and passing his GCE Ordinary Level examination in English literature. Outside the classroom, he excelled at athletics, playing football for his school and county. But the thing that truly grabbed hold of him was music, specifically the American rock and roll he heard on records. His parents thought it was dreadful noise, but Cliff thought it was the future. When he was 16, his father bought him a guitar, an act of reluctant support that would prove transformative. Not long after, Cliff left school and took a job as a filing clerk in an electrical factory where his father also worked, but the job was simply a way to pass time until music could take over. In 1957, he formed a school vocal harmony group called the Quintinettes, performing cover versions of current hits. Later, he formed his own rock group called the Drifters, and at his manager's request, he changed his name from Harry Webb to Cliff Richards to suit the music industry. His real breakthrough came on July 24, 1958 at Abbey Road Studios. Producer Nori Perma from EMI's Columbia label had invited Cliff to audition. The plan was to record an American tune called Schoolboy Crush as the aside with a song called Move It on the B-side. While Schoolboy Crush took nearly 2 hours to record, Move It, written by Ian Samuel, took less time and produced a sound that left no room for doubt. It reached number 2 on the UK singles chart in autumn 1958, and British rock and roll had its first homegrown star. From there, the achievements came faster than anyone could track. He would eventually make the UK singles charts in every one of its first 6 decades, a feat shared only with Elvis Presley. He stacked up 68 top 10 singles and 14 number 1s, including 4 Christmas number 1s, more than any other artist. Yet, none of that success fixed what was quietly broken underneath. The polite smile and flawless suits covered a personal life that never found the same kind of victory. In August 2014, Everything Cliff Richard had spent decades building came down within a matter of hours. Cliff Richard was in Portugal on holiday when he turned on a television and watched police officers search his home. He had not been told the search was happening, nor had anyone informed him why. He learned about it the same way millions of viewers did through live coverage broadcast from a helicopter hovering above his apartment. He was thousands of miles away while his home was searched on live television. The story that led to this moment began nearly 30 years earlier in 1985 at a football stadium in Sheffield. Brummel Lane, home of Sheffield United, was hosting an event led by American evangelist Billy Graham. Among the crowd that day was a teenage boy who would years later make a horrifying allegation against Cliff Richard. For a public figure who had built his entire career on a clean-cut, family-friendly image, the accusation alone carried the potential to destroy everything. When the Metropolitan Police received the allegation, officers were already working on Operation U-Tree, a major inquiry launched after the Jimmy Savile scandal. At the time, there was a strong national focus on past abuse cases, so new claims were handled with care. In July 2014, the Metropolitan Police passed the information to South Yorkshire Police, and a chain of events was set in motion that Cliff Richard could not see coming. Cliff denied the allegation immediately and consistently. Yet, denial did not stop what happened next. South Yorkshire Police decided to search his penthouse apartment in Sunnydale, Berkshire in August 2014. Before the search took place, a BBC journalist named Dan Johnson learned that the investigation existed. What happened between the police and the BBC would later be described in court as a deal. Though both parties disputed this characterization, the BBC agreed to delay breaking the story, and South Yorkshire Police agreed to tip off the BBC about the exact timing of the raid. On the day of the raid, the BBC broadcast live footage from a helicopter that was already hovering above Cliff Richard's address. Viewers watched officers on his property. The coverage treated him, as human rights lawyer Jeffrey Robertson later put it, like a bank robber or a mass murderer. For 2 years, the investigation hung over Cliff Richard's life. He continued to deny the allegation. The Crown Prosecution Service reviewed the evidence and on June 16, 2016, announced its decision. There was insufficient evidence to proceed with any charges. Cliff Richard was never arrested. He was never charged. The investigation closed without a single legal finding against him, but the damage was already done. The live broadcast had been seen by millions. The story had traveled around the world. His reputation, built over 56 years of relentless work, had been stained in a single day. In July 2016, he filed suit against both South Yorkshire Police and the BBC. The legal battle took nearly 2 years to reach the High Court. On July 18, 2018, High Court Judge Anthony Mann delivered the verdict. The BBC had infringed Cliff Richard's privacy rights without legal justification and in a serious and sensationalist way. The police were also found liable. The damages awarded were substantial. £190,000 in general damages from the BBC plus an additional £20,000 in aggravated damages because of the Scoop of the Year nomination. The BBC was ordered to pay 65% of the total, with South Yorkshire Police paying the remaining 35%. Later, the BBC agreed to pay an additional £850,000 to cover his legal fees, plus £315,000 to South Yorkshire Police to reimburse its court costs. But Cliff Richard testified that the case had cost him £3.4 million up to that point, including lawyers and lost business. He said his life had been effectively turned upside down and his reputation worldwide was unnecessarily damaged. A man who had spent decades avoiding scandal had become the subject of a scandal that did not even exist. Between August 2014 and June 2016, Cliff Richard lived through 22 months that he would later describe in court with a level of detail that suggested the wounds had not healed at all. The investigation did not end after one news cycle. It stretched across nearly 2 full years. By the time it was over, the man who walked out of the High Court was not the same man who had watched that helicopter from a hotel room in Portugal. The physical changes were the first thing people noticed. He lost a considerable amount of weight, not because he was trying to, but because stress affected him. His body succumbed to shingles, a painful condition that often flares up when the immune system is under prolonged attack from anxiety and sleeplessness. The mental health deterioration was severe enough to be entered into the court record. He told the court that at one point he actually thought he was going to have a heart attack or stroke. What he saw in the mirror disturbed him even more. He said that sometimes he looked at his own reflection and felt like someone else, a much older version of himself, was looking back. Sleep became its own punishment. He would wake in the middle of the night and replay conversations that had never happened, imagining outcomes that never came. During the day, there was an ever-present knot in his stomach that would not loosen.